Hello ladies, welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a lot done while you listen today, and I hope that it will be peaceful for you. We certainly need good news these days, don't we? Well, today I'm going to talk to you about a few things, and there isn't anything here to see, but I would like to show you my teacup. And this is one of the set of 6 that was sent to me, and I am so proud of it because it's the one that I saved to go with the dress that I made. And this is a Laura Ashley pattern from the 1980s. I already had the dress cut out from years ago, and I just now finished it because I got busy, I gained weight, and I knew that it wouldn't fit me, but because of some of the exercises I have been taking recently, I have been able to squeeze into this dress. It's still a little bit snug, but I was waiting to show this beautiful cup for when I got this dress finished. And the fabric is by Cranston, and it was called Coming Up Roses. I don't think anyone can find it anymore. It used to be in the quilting catalogs and also was found in one of the big box stores called Walmart. And so I wanted to show you this. This is from Brew to a Tea, which you can find online. I just think it's just so beautiful. It is almost like my dress, except for the fact that it has some red in it. So I just love it. I want to thank you, whoever sent that to me. And I want to start out. We have 3 things here. I'm Mrs. Sherman, by the way, and I don't have any comments on the videos, but you can go to the link which I provide in the box and go and see me and watch this on my site, because there's so much more there. Plus you can click continuous play, and if you don't quite get everything you need done, you can listen to another video. I haven't been here in a while because I have been so bogged down with everything, but today I just felt like I needed to talk to you. And I'm going to start out with your day at home. And you know, in the current situation, there aren't going to be the disparaging comments that we've heard for so many years. Those of us who have been at home for a long time and have been homemakers have put up with a lot, and I don't think you're going to be hearing these remarks anymore about how harmful it is for women to be at home, or how unintelligent it is, because people are finding out there's a lot more to it, and they're having personal experience with it. And it's the same with homeschooling. You're not going to hear the remarks that we've heard in the past about it, because people are finding out that they can do it. And one of the problems with this idea that women can't be at home is that it was all promoted by, in a way, the state, because they wanted everybody out. The state wants all the women out working, making money for the state, paying taxes, and staying home means that they don't get anything. But then, when it was their idea to shut everybody down and send everyone home from work, they thought it was a great idea. So what happened to that? Women shouldn't be at home. It's stifling, and it's, what is it, unvarying? What is it that Mrs. Bennett said? She said confining and unvarying. She said, I'll have you know we dine with 20 families. Well, so I have it divided into 3 areas. Those of you who are new here, the 3 areas are the preparation. That means getting your appearance ready for the day at home, because this is really a wonderful place to be, and we want to be worthy of it. We want to dress well for the home. It also helps with the image that it creates for other people and for yourself. And the other thing we go into is a little bit of homemaking, maybe some ideas that you might want to think about. You know, I like to listen to things when I work, and they have to have some depth in them. I don't want some fluff that just kind of makes my mind drift off. I like to listen to things that I can sink my teeth into and think about and grow a little bit. And I challenged you last time that I was speaking here to break your own record. And I will talk about that after I talk about getting dressed. So if you are not dressed and you're not really prepared, you don't have your skincare done and your hair done and your clothing, go and do that. You can call me back. And after you've done that, I did have an elderly friend one time that would do that for me. she would call me in the morning and say, "Are you dressed yet?" And then she would say, "Well, after you get dressed and you've done your hair, call me back." And it gave me something to do, something to like an appointment. And I talked about making appointments in your life at home. But I want to go on to, after you've got dressed, to something that I talked about previously that I might not have explained as well as I should have. In fact, I began to think about it after I'd hung up. And that is when I talked about the scripture that said that our life should be a living sacrifice, and I emphasized living. And I talked about how some people get the idea they're just going to have to be martyrs and sacrifice their lives in a great way, and maybe go down in history. And a lot of this comes from reading stories of people who have been in a religion that required a great deal of them. But I wanted to emphasize something that I forgot to say about the sacrifice, and I mentioned that it was a living sacrifice. Well, a sacrifice is an offering. And we were taught when we were younger that it isn't a sacrifice if it doesn't take any effort on your part. So a sacrifice is an offering. And in a way, when you get dressed, you say, "Oh, I don't want to get dressed. I want to wear casual clothes. I want to be comfortable. And I don't want to I don't want to worry about my appearance." How many times have you heard that? It's nice not to have to worry about the way I look. That's not very sacrificial, is it? If it's an effort, and it's an offering that does take some kind of time, time is a sacrifice too, then that is a sacrifice because it's an offering that takes an effort and costs you something. So a sacrifice, and a living sacrifice, is something that is going to cost you something. But remember, you're living. You don't want to go around looking in sackcloth and ashes, looking like you're half gone, or looking like you don't care about life anymore. So a sacrifice is an offering, and a living sacrifice is an offering while you live. So take some time, even though it is costing you time, it's costing you energy and effort, might even cost you money, to take care of your appearance. That will really help others more than if you gave your life, because you're giving your life in a living way. And it's an offering. It's an offering to the creation of the people that God has created around you, and it's an offering to your family. It's an offering to God. So remember that when you get yourself ready and take care of your appearance, that it's an offering, a sacrifice, a living sacrifice. Now, one thing that you can do to keep your mind and body, it's very important as we go into the homemaking aspect of today, and I hope to walk around with you someday. In a sense, that's just a figure of speech, to take you through part of a day at home and what you might do to get yourself started. If you're having trouble just focusing, knowing where to start, then you need to go get dressed first. That is a start. That it kind of gives you a torch. It gives you a light. It gives you a place to begin. And to keep your focus on the home, I think it's really important to sit down and make a list. Now, a list does not have to have any time limits or time listing on it. I could never follow one of them because I never can do what I'm told. Even when I tell myself to do something, I just reject it. So I make a list, and then when I start to get to feeling a little bit disoriented from all the things that need to be done, I go back to the list and I just say, well, I'm going to do that. And that way I can cross it off and continue. And if I don't finish by the end of the day, my problem is feeling rather tired towards the end of the day. I guess that's the reason it's the end of the day, right? It's time to stop. If I don't finish it, I'll just continue it the next day, include it on the new list. So get your list ready, and then what is the next most important, most urgent thing you need to do? Do the children need to be bathed and dressed in something nice? You will find their countenance changes too when you dress them up, and there's no better place to dress them up and to teach them the importance of dressing up than in the home. And The fact is, they're going to grow out of those clothes mighty fast. You might as well wear them. They might as well wear them. And don't let them hang around in their pajamas all day long, because it doesn't give a beginning and an end to the day. It just seems like they're drifting. And children love some kind of structure. It doesn't have to be extreme, but it is so important, the change that it makes in their countenance when they have fresh, clean clothes, even new clothes on. And it makes them feel like there's something going on. And it's also good, I think, for a mother, a young mother, or a mother with young children, to make a list of what she hopes to be doing today so that she can tell her children, let me look on my list. Mother, they'll ask, what are we doing today? Well, this is what we're doing, and if we get this done, then we'll go outside and do this. Or if we get this done, then we can get out this, whatever it is that they like to do. So it's really important, because they need to know what's happening to them. They have a right to know what is going on in their lives. I'm from a generation of the previous generation of parents. A lot of you can identify with this, but those fathers and mothers told you nothing, just you just went along and did whatever they did, but they told you nothing, and you didn't know what was happening at the end. So it's very important, I think, to tell them what our goals are, so they can share in those goals, and they'll know why they're doing something. Sometimes it's tedious for children to just do things just because they're told. Yes, we expect them to do that, but there has to be a reason. And the reason, it's very important how young you are when you start developing reasoning. And they like to know the reason, not just to do something, but to know the reason, because we hope when we get this finished, we're going to go do this and this, or this is the reason because we have to keep this, or we have to do this. There has to be a reason for everything, including getting dressed. Now, for the homemaking part, if you make a list, the most urgent things should naturally be to make sure that everything's clean and sanitary, the kitchen, the bathroom, and get your laundry done. Those are the 3 things that'll make your house have an odor. So just take care of those. And the other thing is clutter, because clutter can also cause accidents. If there are toys around, if there's anything around that you have moved, boxes of things, you can actually forget they're there, trip over them, piles of books, piles of anything. And so this is really important to keep healthy. They say that most accidents happen in the home, and that's why I say wear a pair of short boots, ankle boots, or something that has the toes and heels covered and the forestep of your foot covered, because the kitchen is a place where you will be dropping a lot of things. I don't often drop things, but I'm always glad when I do that I have sturdy boots on. You can get a lot of injuries from the kitchen especially, but I think it's really important to wear good footwear in the home and make it something that you like. Some people like, I have a pair of boots that look like something from the prairie, and but I don't care for some of the sports shoes at all. They're not very pretty, and they don't match my house or my dresses. So we want to go on to the home, and so the next thing after that would be to make sure that everyone has had the proper nutrition for the beginning of the day, and to cut some things up that the children and you can eat as snacks. Now, right now, my plum tree, which are the Brooks plums, the ones that turn into prunes, they are the purple plums, and that tree is just groaning with fruit, is just falling. So I have a big bowl of those plums, and every now and then I'll walk past and I'll cut one open, take the seed out, and pop it in my mouth, so that I'm just grazing today, all day today. So after nutrition and food and meal preparation, I think that the next important thing is to check around and see if there's anything that needs to be done, and take your children along with you. Just take them from room to room with you. I know when mine were little, I provided my children with things that they could help me with. A little child-sized broom, a child-sized iron and ironing board, a wagon to put things in, and just helping me or watching me, at least being in the room with me. And that way they get an idea of what you do all day. Now, to keep your mind at home. Now, often the things that we do, ladies, seem to be rather repetitive. And we'll think, I saw somebody's blog that said, wash, eat, repeat, something like that. Housework, repeat, because that's what it is. And you are generally doing the same thing over and over while you provide for your family, while you take care of everybody. But to keep your mind from atrophy, and that means deterioration, you need to choose a couple of things that you do every day that is interesting, like acquire some new knowledge. And I've been reading this week about some things that I didn't know about. I like to go back in history and find out how houses were built, and I have recently studied about the teepee, and I thought I've been wanting to know more about the teepees. So, you read about them in stories, you see it in some of the movies, the old Western movies, but I've been wondering about it. So I went to a place that had a lot of information on it with drawings and found out just how these were built. And this is the part of keeping your mind from atrophy. Find something new, a new knowledge every day. Find something new. I'd like to call you up and say, what did you learn today? What is something you learned today? And, we call each other up and say, what did you do today? But it might be the same thing. But what you learned today, that's interesting. Now, choose a new subject, some new knowledge, a new interest also, not just new knowledge, but a new interest. And you don't have to dedicate your life to a new interest. Let's say you want to learn how to crochet or knit. You don't have to invest hundreds of dollars in it and just say, I'm going to be a knitter or, do needlework, because you could lose interest. So just do one small project. Just choose a new interest. Try a little of everything and put the evidence of your handiwork around your house. You can just say, that was when I took a painting class. That was when I took a knitting class. And a lot of these things can be found on the YouTube videos. And also, to have a new knowledge, you're going to have to search around and not just always look for things that you're already interested in, but something else. So I'll just share with you a little bit about the teepee. And as I have received a new book from Miss Lily of the Valley, and it has something about the teepee in it, I wanted to share this with you. And that is, they were made of buffalo hide, and they had 13 poles to hold them up, which were tied with something at the top to make them spread out in a shape. And the top could be undone so that if it were winter, a fire could be built inside of a container in the teepee, and the smoke would go up and out at the top, because the top would be open. But in summer, you could roll up the sides of this tent, this teepee, and the air would be freely flowing through and keep you nice and cool. And there were several houses at the time, types of houses at the time, and I mentioned the longhouse in one previous video, and they weren't necessarily invented during the Native American, Indian, First Nation times in America, amongst the Sioux and the Cherokee and that sort of thing. They were actually styles that were created hundreds of years before, even before Christ, that they can be traced back to some of these types of houses, including the teepee. So I decided that would be something new that I wanted to know and that I could talk about. And I was talking to somebody today. It's interesting what a great morning I had. I got a phone call from someone in Tennessee, and they are friends of ours, and they're a little older than us, but one of their grandchildren had been spending quite a lot of time there, and has to spend the night sometimes, and wants a bedtime story. So this couple started a story, both of them interacting in this story, and the mister kept a sketchbook with sketches of the scenes portrayed to their grandchild in this story. And now he has a big thick pad, and the story, of course, he says never ends because she always wants a story before she goes to bed, and she knows the names of all the characters, the names of all the animals, the names of everything, and he's got this story going. And then I talked to somebody else and asked them what they were doing that was different, and they were doing the same thing. They were writing stories. And I think this is really interesting because, you know, some of these books and stories that we are familiar with, pretty limited, aren't they? You think how many authors you probably can think of, maybe 5, and they were famous and they were published, and so you know the stories, but how many more stories might there have been amongst people that never got anything published? So it was interesting to listen to this man and woman tell their story of telling stories. And I am amazed at how many more people are writing stories. And that's why I say you can homeschool your children. If you can write a story, you can homeschool your children. And if you can be aware of comprehension. Now, before I go into comprehension, I want to go back to dressing and wearing what you wear when you're home. I want to go back to that because I just remembered I had a catalog that came in the mail, an autumn catalog from April Cornell. Now, I don't care for all the styles, but I will tell you something that I observed while going through it. There were so many photographs of the models wearing the dresses and the clothing in a room, in the living room, in the kitchen, in the dining room, on the front porch, in the yard. And it's not a high fashion magazine. It just shows, you know, the ordinary person standing in front of a set table, a well-set table. And that's very interesting to me. And there were some people that were putting up blogs where they were doing sewing, a lot of sewing and garments and sewing, and they would have a picture of something they made, an apron, while they were standing in the kitchen with a mixing bowl. And I really love these background scenes in the April Cornell. You can get this catalog for free, and it's very country-ish, although she does have quite a few formal things. I'm not fond of all the things in here, but they give me a lot of ideas for sewing. The clothing is quite expensive, but it's just beautiful. So I wanted to tell you about that, and wanted to get into a few things that we had in homeschooling. Now, this is called Our Vanishing Landscape by Eric Sloan, and the reason I'm going to read it to you is even if you're not homeschooling, you might find this interesting. Now, there again, and his drawings and his lettering are just beautiful. He died in the 1980s, I think, but he knew the different kinds of fences, and he just sketched these all himself. I am not sure about his background. Sometimes you'll read a wonderful story written by someone, and then you find out about the author, and oh my goodness, you're so disappointed because they didn't kind of live up to the values that they were portraying in their stories and their books. But he wrote something about, and since we're right here in the middle of the hottest season of the year, we're headed for some really worse heat than ever, I thought you might like to hear a little bit about snow and what he said about the snow. Now, he wrote about, the reason he called it Our Vanishing Landscape was because the way fences are built and the materials they're built out of are all changing, and so you rarely see the bridges and the fences and the waterways and the stepping stones that you did in early America or anywhere else. So what he's written here about is about a bridge, and he says, and this is about snow. I thought you might find this interesting. And the title of this chapter is Sleds. Now, this is the type of thing I'm trying to tell you will keep your mind from atrophy, is finding something new every day. Now, you might think, well, what am I going to do with knowledge like that? What am I going to do with it? And a lot of people make the mistake of just dulling so much of their knowledge so that they don't have to carry it. They think they have to carry it around in their head. But the thing is, you really don't. You have a recall. and it will come to you when you need it. And you don't have to worry about having too much knowledge. But one might wonder why the inventory of early American implements does not include some kind of road snowplow. Now, all of you that are in colder places know that your city probably owns a snowplow or gets it from another city in case of emergency. The reason is that snow was never a threat, but rather it was an asset to the average road traffic of 100 years ago. Just keep listening. The last thing an old-time farmer would think of doing would be to clear the snow from his road, for he had looked forward all year to the time that he could use snow-covered roads for hauling his heavier loads. At the first sign of snow, sleds of all sorts emerged from the barns, and the hauling of timber or stones began without the bother of bogged wheels or the slough of mud. When the snow finally began to melt, the farmer put away his sleds and he forgot about further heavy transportation. That is a new bit of knowledge for me. They did keep industrial-sized sleds in their barns that they used in winter to carry on their work. The only winter road equipment of yesterday was a machine to preserve the snow. This is interesting. The Vermont snow roller packed snow down to make it smooth and rock ballast and last longer. Consisting of wooden rollers and a platform on top for rock ballast, this machine is now probably one of the scarcest piece of New England Americana. Shelburne Museum in Vermont unearthed what they believed to be one of the last snow rollers. Now, he went to all these places in order to get his sketches of all these things. But even this book might bring to light others hidden away in barns that were hitherto listed as unexplainable farm equipment. Yes, how many times have some of us in the country been to old barns and wondered what in the world some of those things were? Sleds were once used both with or without snow wherever there was any heavy hauling job to be done. That's right. There were stone boats for moving rocks, lumber sleds for moving logs, pungs for general farm use, and innumerable sleighs for pleasure and personal transportation. Children tobogganed down grassy slopes during the summer almost as easily as they did on snow during the winter. Well, we don't really do that, do we, anymore in the summer? If a farmer of the past could return today, his first reaction might be wonder at the disappearance of sleds from the rural scene. Far preceding the invention of the wheel and the crudest vehicle known, the sled is also the fastest. Now, he has several drawings of different kinds of sleds, so see, I learned something new. You can use sleds in summer too on grassy hills. Well, of course, today we have cardboard, and we can slide down a hill on cardboard. I would still do that, you know. In 1954, a sled was chosen as a rocket-propelled land machine which reached the record of 632 miles an hour. The object was to determine how much acceleration a man can stand leaping from a jet plane. After discarding wheeled vehicles as being too frail, a sled that could have done service in any farmer's barn was built to make the final test. Sleds were also the fastest thing in the world of 100 years ago. For the sail sled, I don't know if you've ever seen a sail sled. It's a sled with a sail on it. Or the ice boat was doing 60 miles an hour when railroad trains were still in the creeping stage. Yeah, all you would need is snow or ice or a hill, and you have a sail. One of the most popular Currier and Ives prints shows ice boats racing trains up and down the Hudson River, where there were ice yachting clubs with memberships in the thousands. I wonder what happened to all that. The milding winters and disappearance of suitable ice is now making the ice boat a thing of the past, but its record average speed in excess of 145 miles an hour, faster than that of a sports car, testifies to the efficiency of the sled principle. Oddly enough, Oliver Booth, who built the first ice yacht in 1790 in New York, predicted that he had designed what would become the fastest land vehicle in the world. So this is these are interesting details that he puts into this. And of course, there are other ways to increase your knowledge. You don't have to read books like that if you don't want to. Now, for some of you that are interested and have your children at home and need to teach them how to read, and you need to not just teach them how to read. And the big difference between you teaching them and an institution following institutional guidelines of teaching them or sending them to an institution to be taught is that you can also teach them how to think about what they read. And you can choose their reading material or write it yourself. Now, some of these, like this is an old reprint of a McGuffey reader, and some of these things are so simple that you could write them yourself. Unfortunately, these just depict scenes and stories of times in the past that a child might not experience, and basically they were very country-ish and outdoorish. And I read this story to you before, but it also taught values while it was teaching this, and you can too. And one of the things that is so interesting about it is that if you take something that was written back in 1837 and you think about what kind of character qualities a child would have at a certain age, they would have gotten it a lot from these books and from their early teaching material. So if you think about that, then if a child learned to be good, kind, and the fruit of the Spirit, goodness and peace and kindness and gratitude, if they learn to be like that from stories like this, then if you read them and you reproduced them, that character will be reproduced in your children. So your reading material has a lot to do with what's in your heart and what's in your mind and what's in your soul. Well, this is a story of, and I want to talk about comprehension. And the reason I'd like to talk about comprehension today, and I hope you're getting something done and not too bored, I would like to talk more about the home and housekeeping, and maybe I'll get around to that today. But these are a couple of things that I had in my notes that I needed to talk to you about. And that is comprehension. Comprehension is very important because it goes into the people section, understanding people and getting along with people in this video series that I'm doing, as I always have at the last, handling people. And I always discuss quirkiness and difficult people and people that like to contradict and argue all the time. What do you do with them and how do you handle them in the home? And if they're not children, it's almost impossible to change them. So what you have to do is work around them. You have to just accept the fact that they are so well practiced in being contradictory, argumentative, negative, that they're not going to be able to change. You aren't going to be able to change them. They can only change by their own determined will. And so you have to understand too, not to put too much faith in people. Even if you have relatives and you think they're all going to be on board with the way you are and with what you do and how you're teaching your children, how you're keeping your house and how you're raising your family, they can disappoint you. So it's never good to totally have faith in people. You can't. They can turn on you on a dime just depending on what's happening to them. And one of the things I've noticed about people who are negative all the time, who contradict all the time, and who seem to want to put a sour atmosphere on everything. If you're trying to have a conversation, if you're in a group of people talking, is if you'll notice, the one that is causing the most trouble is the one that's most stunted in their spiritual and emotional, physical growth and experience. And that's why I tell you to find something new every day. Learn something new every day that has some value, not just to learn something new, not something that would take up space in your brain that has no benefit to you, because these people have got stuck. They've just got mentally stuck, and that's all they can do is answer these quick negative comments. That's all they do to everything you say, and they're very stuck. They have very little to talk about. If they don't study things like this, and they don't explore new ideas, and they don't try to develop new skills, and they don't have a wide experience in life, they can start to grow inward. And that's why I'm having these videos, because as a homemaker, it would be easy to do, because what we do every day is so repetitive. So it's to keep it interesting, to keep life interesting. And I used to be folding clothes, and then I would be talking to my children while I was folding clothes and giving them their clothes, and talking to them about some interesting thing, so that life was not just a predictable, boring event all the time, but I would be talking about principles to them. But reading comprehension is one of the things that these troublesome people lack. They lack life comprehension. They never learned to comprehend what was in a conversation, a sentence, a story, anything. And it actually, unfortunately, starts with reading comprehension. And you can get books now from, I mentioned one company, Abeka, and there are other companies too. Christian Liberty was a good one, that have books called Reading Comprehension. And what these books do is they present a story, a collection of stories, and McGuffey Readers does it too. Put a story in there, and at the end of the story, show similes, show synonyms, words like present and present that are spelled alike but pronounced differently, so that the child can tell a difference between when they're reading, they can comprehend it when someone is going to present something, or someone's going to get a present, they can comprehend it, and that story becomes more balanced to them. What we're finding today is that people will not accept figures of speech or anything that's irony or exaggeration. Exaggeration is fine if it's good for the story and good for the point. And we used to exaggerate a lot with our sayings, and but today we're finding that people will, like I told you an example not long ago of someone who had taken a cooking course, and she had taken a course online of how to present a tea and how to make all the little bite-sized goodies, and she was explaining to a group of ladies that she got together with every year, and she was showing them what she had made, and she'd created a tea for them, and they wanted to know about this class she was taking. And she said, well, I learned that presentation is everything. And she was going to continue talking about it, and someone in the group said, no, it's not. No, it's not. Presentation is not everything. And somebody else says, yeah, not all the time. So what they did was that they took it so literally, because apparently to say presentation is everything is a lie, because it isn't. Well, obviously it isn't, but it was an exaggeration to emphasize the point, and Christ Jesus himself used things like this to emphasize a point, so that it could be understood more clearly. If you're serving food and you're preparing food, presentation is everything. If you're coming into the house and you have guests, presentation is everything. If you're getting dressed for your day at home, and this wonderful life that we've been given every day is such a gift, then presentation is everything. But somebody could object to it because that's not the exact truth, and they don't understand that things like that can be used to emphasize how important something is. So you can say something is everything. Well, obviously it's not life itself, and it's not salvation, and it's not marriage, and it's not anything like that. It was a figure of speech that's been used for many years to show the importance of something, and that's why reading comprehension is so important, because we're entering an era where the figures of speech and the sayings and the expressions have not been handed down. They've been not just not handed down, they have been so totally rejected. And you'll see this in politics a lot, where a politician will say something like, that person's completely cracked. And they'll say, well, why did she say that? She didn't have him examined, at a doctor's office or everything. It was an expression to indicate her feelings about how she felt about this person. And these things need to be understood, because in a home where you have maybe some adults that come in, or someone that lives there that you're related to, that will not get along and will always be contradicting and will always be arguing, they may be suffering from lack of comprehension. And reading comprehension is so important when they're in grade school. So you can get a book like this, is the McGuffey's Pictorial Electric Primer. And what it means is it's pre-reading, but it's pretty advanced actually. So I want to read a story to you out of it and just show you how I'm sure today they could get it wrong, but it's almost like, I think in one of Jane Austen's novels, she had a reference to something like this, that if someone, one of her characters, if they could get it wrong, they would. And remember in Emma, she told Harriet, you get an idea, Harriet, you take an idea and you run wild with it. And they get a little, just like the silliness, of some of the women in the Jane Austen story, Emma, where a young girl will just get an idea that someone likes her better than they actually do because of some little thing. And so comprehension in life is just as important as reading comprehension, to comprehend something. And I have found myself getting caught up in explaining something to someone who begins to contradict or argue, and I realize that could be a mistake. Because the more information you give someone who has not got good comprehension, what comprehension